Okay, so my name is Sue Carr. I'm the Executive Director of 541 Eatery and Exchange. I've lived in Hamilton for about 30-something years. And we've been running this place for 4 years. So 541 is a restaurant, that's what you saw when you came in. And so we make food. We make food from scratch, everything we make from scratch here. The only thing we don't is our bread. But we make our soups, our baked goods, our chilies, our sandwiches. So the idea came from two people, James Peters and Michael Bowyer, who were friends and who wanted to start a not-for-profit for benefit business on Barton Street. And they came to realize that a restaurant or a cafe would be a good idea because this part of Barton Street is something of a food desert. It's hard to find places to get food, either in the supermarket or in a place like this that prepares food for people. It's also an area that's having very poor social determinants of health, so things like age of death, educational level reached, all sorts of other things like incidence of diabetes, incidence of heart disease. They're all pretty crummy in this neighborhood, but it doesn't actually totally describe the neighborhood itself. So that was the reason they picked opening this place here. But there's much more to this neighborhood than just statistics like that would suggest. This area is resilient. This area is for the people who care very much about the place that they live in. This area is pretty mixed, so it's on the cusp of changing, and what we'd like to say is actually people deserve to stay in the neighbourhood that they've been living in and not be displaced by higher rents as people decide, oh, this is a good cheap place to live, let's move in here and do it up, and we call that process gentrification. So I'd like to think that we are not an agent of that change towards gentrification, but more a way of allowing the neighbourhood to put down roots and stay here. I think this cause matters to me because I care very much about people having equal access to good food in safe environments. I like the way that we do things here because it brings people together that would otherwise be separate. I think it's a good reminder for us daily to understand, for many of us, how great our privilege is and how that impacts directly on the experience that other people have in their lives. Well, we keep our prices low, I guess, by having a lot of volunteers who help us. So we have between 150 and 200 volunteers through in a week helping us in various ways, from cooking to cleaning to serving to repairing to putting on events, you name it. Around here, volunteers do it. We have a core staff who are very, very dedicated and don't get paid nearly enough for what they do. And somehow we manage to make it work. So the volunteers do two things. They do keep our payroll costs down, but they also change the feel and the atmosphere of this place. So you know that when you go to a friend's home and you know where she keeps the coffee or the tea or the things in her fridge, and you know where to put your shoes and you know where to hang your coat, you feel differently about going into that person's place. Well, that's how it is here, we think, for our customers, because many of them are also our volunteers and they help out. So it's very much a sort of a family atmosphere around here. And then the other way that we keep our prices low is that we have a pay-it-forward system that uses buttons. So if you come in, you'll see two jars of buttons. One's usually quite full and one's usually quite empty. And we might say to you when you buy a coffee, would you like to buy a button? And if you said yes, you'd give us $1. And then we'd say, would you like to take a button from the full jar into the empty jar? And that then becomes currency that anybody can use when they come into the cafe. And anyone is able to use up to 5 buttons. That's $5 a day towards anything on the menu. The only restrictions are unaccompanied children, and we say 1 treat and no pop, because we would like to at least make sure they eat something healthy one day. We end up doing the same thing. We feed hungry people. I think that how we do it is fundamentally different. I think one of the things that we say here is that we don't think there should be any difference in the food that people eat if they can pay for it or if they can't. Why, when somebody is on social benefits or earning very little, should they be forced to eat only the things that we choose to give away? And if you go to a food bank, what you get is not particularly healthy. It's filling, it's carbohydrate, but there's not a lot of fresh fruit and veg, and there isn't a lot of meat. Well, we don't sell a lot of meat here, but there isn't a lot of protein. And that's not a critique of all food banks, but it's not the ideal way. It's not the most dignified way of providing food. And soup kitchens, again, if you've ever had a meal in a soup kitchen, your experience is that you sit down at a table with lots of other people, and there's two ways. Either you line up with a plate and people put the food on the plate and then you take it and sit down, or you sit somewhere and they come and they put a plate of food in front of you and they whip it away as soon as you've gone, and they put something else in front of you, and you don't really have a lot of choice. You have what there is, and it's fairly demeaning to sit there and eat while volunteers hover over you, even the best volunteers in the world. And I know, because I've worked in an organisation where we used to do that, so I've been on both sides of the fence. And my thing when I sat there was, if I ever have a chance to do this differently, I'll do it differently. That's what we do here. We also have a youth outreach worker, because we know that this area has quite a lot of at-risk youth. And so we have a half-time youth outreach worker who works with our youth, runs games evenings, meets with them in the week, encourages them to stay in school, goes to parent-teacher meetings when parents perhaps aren't willing or able or need accompaniment to do so, runs summer camps. So we have a soccer camp that runs in the park up the road. We have a teen leadership camp that runs throughout the summer to help students get their 40 hours that they're required to graduate. And he also facilitates the partnership we have with Arosha, which is a creation care charity, and they have a farm out in Puslinch outside Hamilton. And so last summer, once a week, all of our kids in the neighbourhood got on a little school bus, went out there, we packed a lunch up for them with our volunteers and Arosha's volunteers. They spent a day on the farm, came back in the afternoon, filthy dirty, very excited, having had a day out of Hamilton, which they would never get otherwise. Our kids don't get to leave Hamilton ever. So those things we do all the time, and if we never did anything else and we just did that and we did it well, it would be enough. I don't think we have to grow. We don't have to do things better or bigger. We don't have to clone ourselves. And if somebody says, are you going to open a 541 in another city? I say, no, that's your job. We'll help you, we'll tell you the mistakes we made, and I'm sure we made lots, but our job is to be contextual and local and make a difference here. We're rooted in this place, and I would like to be a model for other places to figure out how they would do something like this in their setting. I think it makes us sad more than worried, because I think there's just this base inequality, and it's not just in Hamilton. I mean, it's anywhere where there's a big divide between marginalised people and people who think of themselves at the centre and the top of all things. You can be at the centre and the top at the same time, I suspect you can. We take it, so many of us take it for granted that we have enough money in our bank accounts, even if it's OSAP, we have money that we can draw on. When it's, I have $3 or $4 to get through the day, if that, and nothing else, most of us have no idea what that feels like. And that means that it impacts everything else. If I choose to eat today, maybe I don't fill a prescription. If I pay my rent, then I don't have the money to feed my kids. So does it worry me? Well, yes, it worries me, because people go to bed hungry, especially kids, especially in Hamilton. 25%, I think, of kids live below the poverty line in Hamilton. That's a lot. And what that does to people, especially kids as they're growing up and they're growing up hungry, is that they don't do well in school because they're hungry, so they don't concentrate, their brains don't develop well as well as they should. We set them up for a really tough, difficult early entry into life, and it could be better than that. And food is something to gather around and to enjoy, not to eat because it's just to keep you going. It's more than just base filling of caloric dietary needs. We celebrate around tables. You know, it was family day yesterday. I had a house full of family all eating and making food together in the kitchen. Many people don't ever experience that level of community, and so what we offer here, the combination of food and this thing that we call family, that could be just called community, is powerful and enriching, and it feeds people in more ways than one. The summer we opened, where we didn't have air conditioning at all, we don't have very good air conditioning now, but we've got some, our volunteers would come in, and they'd come in all sort of put together, and they'd leave this sweaty, drippy mess. And I'd say, I'm so sorry that it was so unpleasant. And they said, no, it was wonderful, so we'll be back next week. It was so much fun, I'm so glad we did this. And it took me a while to wrap my head around the fact that actually working and volunteering here for people is tremendously fulfilling. It feels like a part of something bigger that's worthwhile, that's making a difference. And it feels like that because it is. Because this is something bigger than just each of us who work here. It's bigger than the sum of its parts. When you're out there and you see the diversity of people eating together, you don't get that in other places. You just don't. We stratify things so clearly. And to me, that's very powerful, and our volunteers get that. And we have a wide range of volunteers. You can be 14 to however old you like. So we have people who are way into their retirement years and people who are just trying to get through high school. We have people on community service orders for the court system, and we have just regular folks who have decided they want to give of their time each week. 4 hours a week is what we suggest, and some people give us so much more. I can't tell you how indebted we are to their generosity. It's quite inspiring. So here's the thing. You don't make a lot of money in the food service industry. Most places don't make any money. Most places don't have margins that they can give away. Their margins are gone on their rent, and they're just keeping the place open. It's really hard for them. They're not making much money. Nobody gets rich running a restaurant. At least nobody I know does. And so it's hard for them to have pay it forward in their restaurant, because paying it forward would be a lot of money. If an entree costs $25, $30, you'd have to pay forward a lot. There are some restaurants in other places that have one night a week where they sort of turn it over, they cook one meal and they open perhaps on a Monday night, which is a classic night to be shut, to folks who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford a meal. And you can find that on the internet. It's beautiful. It's not the same as having people coming in and eating together. So what some places have done in Hamilton is to put a button jar on their counter and collect button money for us, so that their customers pay it forward, but not to eat in that restaurant, but then the business will give us that money that they've collected, and we'll use that to put buttons in our button jar. So in fact, people in Hamilton are still collecting towards folks who are on the margins, but they're doing it so that they can be fed here. But I have had other businesses sort of saying, hey, can we use your button idea? I had a hairdresser call up and say, could they use our button idea? I was like, yep, we're certainly never going to patent it. It's a freebie, it's shareware. You can have that. You can do it.
What would you like to pass on to future generations?
Oh, good heavens. Legacy questions. I don't know yet. What would I like to pass on? Well, I mean, one is if you've got a dream or if you've got a crazy idea, try it. This was a crazy idea. It should not have worked. We had no idea what we were doing. None of us really had any experience doing anything like this. And here we are. And we have made a tremendous number of mistakes along the way, but we're still here and it's sort of working as far as we can see. So if you have a crazy idea, gather people around you and ask them if they can see that idea from where you're standing, and get a number of people together. Don't do it on your own, and try it. What's the worst you could do? You could fail. Like the bottom of the world won't fall out. So try something. The legacy here, I just think this is a different way of doing business. It's also a different way of doing what people would call charity. Because we're connected to a church, we can offer charitable receipts for donations. That's a big deal. I'd love to see clones of us starting up in every neighborhood, because there's enough need out there. And certainly in other places in Ontario, like Simcoe, for instance, Brampton, they're trying something. There are other groups of people getting together to try something like us. They may not be exactly the same, but similar. So if there was a legacy at all, I would love that there are restaurants, cafes, coffee shops like this springing up all over. And people would say, oh, if they're going to a new area, a new neighborhood, where's the not-for-profit one? And you Googled it and you found it and you said, oh, let's go there, because I'm going to have a coffee anywhere. I'd like to make my coffee count. I don't think you'll put the regular for-profit places out of business. because there's too high a demand. But if it was a place where people knew that everybody could eat and drink together, I think it would attract people. I think it's just a little sowing of a seed into society, into the way we think. So that would be good.